Hello, I'm Simon Whistler. You're watching Today I Found Out, and in the video today, the Panama Canal and its amazing locks. Just before we get started, I do want to say that this video is brought to you by World of Warships. It is the thinking man's action game, and stay tuned because at the end of this video, I play it for a little bit of time. But if you want to get started right now, make sure you check out the link in the description box below. Loads of free perks for people who sign up for free using our link and promo code, and let's get into it. Rising 85 feet above the surface of one ocean and then descending again to be gently floated onto another one, ships that traverse the Panama Canal shave nearly 8,000 miles off their voyage to the other side by investing a long workday climbing up and then going back down the Isthmus of Panama. Made possible by a handful of locks, despite the extreme expense for commercial vehicles to traverse it, about 5% of all the trade in the entire world passes through this early 20th century engineering marvel. Where the canal sits, the Isthmus of Panama, is a mere 51 miles across, compared with the Suez Canal, which was twice that length when first constructed in the modern era in 1869. The shorter Panama Canal was expected to be relatively easy to build when first envisioned in 1879. And since those visionaries had successfully completed the sea-level Suez Canal, they planned on making the man-made waterway that would join the Atlantic and the Pacific Oceans in the same manner, i.e. at sea level. Sea-level canals are precisely what the name implies. The channels are dug sufficiently deep that their water surfaces are the same level as that of the bodies of water they want to join, and to accomplish this, a great deal of earth is removed. In the construction of the sea-level Suez Canal, approximately 600 million cubic feet of stuff was removed from the land, and more was dredged from the adjoining bodies of water. With that French-dug channel that joins the Mediterranean and the Red Seas taking only 10 years to complete in the middle of the 19th century, many thought a similar channel across the far smaller Central American peninsula would be a snap. Well, in one of the greatest examples of hubris in the Western world, they could not have been more wrong. Diplomat and engineer Vicomte Ferdinand Marie de Lesseps was instrumental in building the Suez Canal, and he led the initial work on the Panama Canal as well. Disease and construction delays hampered the project, and after nearly 7 years, only a few of the hundreds of feet of excavation necessary had been accomplished. And this was just from one part of the channel. Yet, even with these dramatic failures, it still took Lesseps another 2 years before he agreed to consider the construction of locks to help solve the increasing elevation in the middle, thus reducing the amount of excavation needed between the two sea-level sides. But even then, the locks were intended to be a mere temporary solution while the digging of the sea-level passage continued. Interestingly, the person chosen to construct the locks was none other than Gustave Eiffel, who built the tower in Paris the next year for the 1889 World's Fair. But, well, it was already too late for the Central American project. Compagnie Nouvelle, the company funding the work, went bankrupt in 1888, and de Lesseps died in disgrace shortly after. Understanding the immense value such a canal would have to the United States, President Theodore Roosevelt committed to the construction of the canal, and in 1903 negotiated the Hay-Haran Treaty with Colombia, which owned the canal zone at the time. Wisely, the Colombian Senate feared the United States would use the opportunity to seize even greater political power in the country, and they refused to ratify it. Undeterred, the U.S. then aided a Panamanian nationalists' rebellion, including stopping American-owned railroads from transporting Colombian troops and sending the Nashville, a U.S. warship, to protect the rebels. On November 6, 1903, the United States recognized the Republic of Panama. 2 days later, a new treaty, the Haber Alveria, was signed, and it granted the U.S. permanent and exclusive possession of the zone in exchange for a $10 million signing bonus, which is worth about $255 million today and $250,000 annually, beginning 9 years later. Work was slow going over the next few years, with efforts focused on revamping the 60-year-old railroad and improving working and living conditions. The locks were begun in August of 1909 with the construction of Gatun locks on the Atlantic side. Consisting of over 3 million cubic yards of concrete, at Gatun there are 3 sets of paired locks. The canal is actually 2 parallel channels that, in principle, would allow 2 ships to pass in opposing directions at the same time. Each lock is 1,050 feet long and 110 feet wide, and together they are placed consecutively like watery stair steps to ultimately raise or lower ships the 85 feet between the highest point on land and the ocean's surface. As a ship enters a lock, over 25 million gallons of water are added to raise the boat to a level sufficient to allow it to enter the next lock. Walls that are anywhere from 45 to 55 feet thick at the base and tapering to just 8 feet at the top hold all of this water in. This process repeats twice on either side until the ship reaches the plateau, where it sails across the isthmus towards the other set of locks to repeat the process. But obviously it does this in reverse. Water is drained and the ship is lowered at each step. On the Pacific side, there is a single lock near the apex of the Gatun Lake called the Pedro Miguel. Then there are 2 others down to the ocean at Miraflores. Ships enter via 2 pairs of large yet relatively lightweight and buoyant 7 feet thick gates that vary in size depending on the conditions. The heaviest and tallest gates, 662 tons and 82 feet high, are at Miraflores, where the tidal range varies greatly. In fact, there, the difference between extreme high and low tide is so great that, depending on conditions, a boat may need to be lifted or lowered as much as 64.5 feet or as little as 43 feet. The remaining Pacific lift at the Pedro Miguel lock is consistently 31 feet. Likewise, on the Atlantic side, the lift of the 3 Gatun locks remains relatively stable at 85 feet in total. Remarkably, ships require only 2 feet of clearance on each side of the canal, such that in the 110-foot wide area, a boat of 106 feet across may traverse, although not necessarily without a bit of anxiety. The maximum length of a ship allowed in the canal is 965 feet, and the maximum draft is 39.5 feet. Together, these maximum specs are known as the Panamax. This is pretty small by today's standards of commercial ships, and although some massive ocean vessels routinely carry 18,000 containers, the largest that can pass through the canal will hold less than 5,000. Completed in 2016, the new canal has a set of locks which are 180 feet wide and 1,400 feet long. This new size means ships as big as the largest that could traverse the Suez Canal can now travel through the Panama Canal. They can hold about 13,000 containers. Just before we get into the bonus facts, I do want to say that this video is brought to you by World of Warships, which I think is pretty appropriate because so much of this video was all about ships. Smooth transition. In World of Warships, though, you are put in command of a massive fleet featuring some of history's most iconic warships. Now, the best way for me to show you this game is to play it for a little bit, so let's just roll to me playing on my computer.
Alright, welcome to the game. This is World of Warships. Let me just first apologize for the kind of bad audio on the recording right now. I'm using a USB headset that I had for my computer. I don't have a proper mic for this thing. Or I do have a proper mic for this thing, but I kept having some problems, so I'm just using this one. Bear with me. You'll get the point. This is a ship. It's called the HMS Campbelltown. This is the one you get for free if you use our link, by the way. It's a nice looking ship. Look at that. And we've even got lifeboats in case, as will probably happen if, the expletive hits the fan. But, yeah, there's loads of other ships as well. We got this, got the British one. Oh, the Campbelltown's British as well. It feels slightly appropriate that I play with that. We got this French one, the Bougainville. This even sounds French. I got this American one, the Erie or the Erie. I'm going to play with the Campbelltown because it's the free ship. I like it. I played with this in the last ad spot I made for this World of Warships, and I got my ass subsequently handed to me because it's a bit advanced for me. Since then I've been playing and I've got a little bit better, so I get my ass kicked less frequently. Just as this loads, let me tell you, this game is completely for free. You can download it for free. Do use our link and use our promo code though, because then you get all the free stuff on top of the game that's free. But trust me, it's worth it. I get a lot of things wanting me to promo games, and often it's like, hey, the game's free, but then you actually have to buy like a million things for it to actually be fun. Not the case with World of Warships. It is straight up fun. I've never paid for anything. Here's my ship. Here's my ship. It's the Campbelltown. It is beautiful. This game is really, really good looking. Apparently these boats take like, I can't remember the exact figure they told me. I think it was like 6 months, but don't hold me on that. For them to like scan it, design it, all of this, so it's nice and accurate. Now in this game, this is just one class of ships. There are 4. But that sounds like there aren't many ships. That's classes. Within that, there are many, within each class, there are many ships, and within each ships, there are like I don't know, it's obviously not a billion, but it's a lot of upgrades that you can make to them. If I fire at my friends, I'll just fire over his head. Whoa! That's quite a range on that one. Have I got to go around this island? Yep. This dude's going the long way around. Coward! Is this guy just launching missiles? These guys, come on! Be serious. Uh-oh, here's the bad guy. So if we scope him out... Whoops, that's not scope, this is scope. There we go. Oh, no, that's going to go wide. That's Let's do it. Oh, that's close. Come on. Okay, switching to these. Gonna go short range.
Torpedoes, direct front.
Oh, you're dead. Yes. Wow, this is pretty intense. Let's do a smoke screen. Why not? Wow, these guys are pretty good. This guy's not shooting me, I don't know why. Let's do some of these boys. Oh, that's it for you. Yes. Next up. Yes. This is really close. Wow, uh-oh. I gotta repair. Guy, I gotta face him. He's trying to shoot me. Come on. Ain't where I'm gonna be, man. Not where I was. Oh, this is not good for me. I gotta go out of here. Engine boost. Let's rock and roll. Oh, this is not good for me. This is not good. Ah! This was a proper battle. The last few games I've just been whipping ass. Let's play again. It's begun! This guy is so slow compared to that Campbelltown. Oh, I gotta pay attention. Don't want to spend too much time in that scope mode or they secretly get you. Oh, that's it for you, son. Oh, there's a guy right here. Oh no! That's right. What is this guy firing? I want that. What is that? What weapon has he got? I'm not gonna get in the way of that. We won. That's how we roll. Granted, the guy with the giant gun probably did most of the winning there, but I think I sank a couple of guys.
So that's World of Warships. It is the perfect balance of action and strategic gameplay. I really like it, as you probably saw. It's a thinking man's action game, as I said at the beginning. So follow our link in the description and use the invite code to get loads of stuff for free. That code is PlayWarships2018, one word. You get 250 doubloons, 1 million credits, 3 days of premium, and that Campbelltown ship, as well as a port slot. So lots of great stuff. Thanks to World of Warships for sponsoring, and let's get into the bonus facts. Interestingly, due to currents and other such factors, the Pacific around Panama is on average about 8 inches, that's 20 centimeters higher than the Atlantic, meaning that if a sea level system was dug, there would be a significant current flowing from the Pacific side to the Atlantic side. Tidal currents would also present something of a problem for ships in this case. Now for another bonus fact. If you're wondering how much it costs to go through the Panama Canal, this varies greatly depending on what you're hauling and the size and type of your ship. But for reference, if you are a commercial ship carrying around 5,000 containers, you can expect to pay a bit under $500,000 when all the fees are added up. This does vary though depending on several factors. On the other hand, if you're a cruise ship holding say 1,000 passengers, the cruise company is going to be paying close to $150,000 for the shortcut. However, if you're just out there on your little private boat, you can expect to pay somewhere between $1,000 to $3,000 to go from one side to the other. So I really hope you enjoyed that video. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel for brand new videos every day of the week. Also, I've got a podcast. It's called Brain Food. It's content just like this, but in the podcast form. We go into a bit more depth and really get into all of the details on a particular subject. Check it out through the links in the description below, or just search your favorite podcast app for Brain Food. And if you like this YouTube channel, I think you will really love that podcast. But if you want to watch something else right now, check out a related video from the past over there on the right. And as always, thank you for watching.